log your video off at some point to go cook or do whatever. So today's good goal is to be informative for you guys. As you probably know, these never existed until last year. And then with COVID, it was just really hard to like give you guys a good feel for our program, especially when you're not easily able to come visit. And so basically our goal throughout all this virtual stuff is basically to let you meet people in the program and kind of get a feel about what we're all about and really ask any questions you may have. On that note, I will say that last year was like a whole new world for us. And so we churned out a whole bunch of like online content. And so if you have any specific interest in things like critical care or ultrasound or EMS or whatever, we probably did some sort of a short video or a panel or something about it. And so you can check that all out. Historically, we used christem.com as like our main website. But now we use our blog as well, acmcem.com. And that's basically where we just dump all of our content. So if there's something that you're interested in, like more niche, like feel free to check that out. And if there's nothing there, shoot us an email and we're happy to either create something or just talk about it ourselves. So, all right, Tom, I'm going to have you just start, maybe just give us a little intro about you, where you're from, and we'll start with that.
Cool. All right. What's up, guys? I'm Tom. I'm one of the third years here. I am a local guy. I was actually born at Christ Hospital. I live in the south suburbs now, Payless Park. And I was kind of born and raised in Orland. So I never really strayed very far from the area. So if anyone has any questions about local things, the suburbs, things like that, feel free to ask.
Tom's also we get assigned a mentor mentee. Tom's also my mentee. And last night we played Top Golf. And we played with Carrie Tekwani, the med student clerkship director, who she kicked our ass. So yeah. Pretty badly, actually. And then actually a nice contrast here. Tom grew up around here and lives in the burbs. Now I got Esmail, who did not and lives in the city. So you go ahead and introduce yourself next.
All right. Yeah, my name's Esmail. So yeah, I'm not from Chicago. I moved here for residency. I had some connections to Chicago. I had some friends and stuff at the time, but I was born in Germany, actually. I've moved around a bunch, Texas, Philadelphia, and most recently I was from South Carolina, where I did med school. And unfortunately, I want to stay in Chicago probably, but I'm in the military, so I will be moving away somewhere else after residency.
I'm sure you and I talked about this at some point during a shift, but did you move around a lot because of military reasons?
No, yeah, great. Totally fair question, but my dad just moved. I don't know. My mom and dad just moved. My dad just switched jobs a lot.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Esmail, I might have you go second just to piggyback off of that. So maybe for them sitting here, like what was it that either got you interested or like what was it about Christ got you interested to interview and ultimately to end up here with us?
I think it was a combination of things. I mean, for me, going into the military, I basically wanted experience in a high stress environment. I wanted to be able to kind of like go into the military and be calm and be able to like function in any situation with like little resources. That was kind of like my ideal sort of something that would prepare me for that, a program that would prepare me. So for Christ, from what I had heard from everyone, a lot of acuity, a lot of volume, which I think there are other programs that have that. But then the other thing on top of not only great education, like good attendings, the acuity, the volume, was just honestly the people. So for me, I did an interview and I did the social before. And at the time we were allowed to, I did a second look. And every single person that I had encountered, every person that I had met, I just got along with really well. I could tell everyone got along with each other. So it was really just the people and the combination of just a good, solid program for me.
Oh, go ahead, please.
And so this was my number one choice. Luckily, I still don't know how I got in, but yeah.
Esmail's an awesome president, so that's how. I should introduce myself also. I'm Michael Cerrone, one of the APDs, and besides being an APD at Christ now, I also train at Christ. You said it, and I think we're all coming from different backgrounds, but I would sort of echo that, which is I remember on the interview day, at the time Gerzatis was the PD, but Elise still does it because I sit in a lot of them. And they put up the slide and she talks like there's a whole bunch of stuff about like kind of our core values and our mission statement. And then a lot of the like, you know, the breakdown of who goes into specific fellowships and the like really niche training and all that. But at our very core, Christ has always been about training awesome clinicians. And like that, like she talks about how that's our calling card. Like no matter where you go, if you're a badass ER doc, you can go work anywhere, right? And so I thought that was super attractive. And then we went and walked around the ED when you used to be able to do that in person, and like the halls were busting with patients. And I remember there was like one guy in our group who was like, he like ran away, and the rest of us were like, this is awesome, right? So I totally feel you on that. Tom, how about you? What was it that kind of attracted you? Aside being like a local guy, what was unique about the program for you?
Yeah. So like I said before, being a local guy, I was kind of drawn to the program from the get-go. But then having rotated at Christ, actually a couple times I rotated on trauma and I rotated in the ER. So I had kind of a holistic experience there, kind of seeing a couple different sides of the thing. And in between the acuity and, like, as Miles said, the people, it really just pulled me in. I mean, we, like Cerrone said, we went out to Topgolf last night. And our program is very big on wellness and resident wellness and happiness and everything. And we frequently do stuff like that, whether it be with our mentor or as a class and things like that. And that's kind of what the previous residents explained to me when I was interviewing and rotating and stuff, how big of like a friendship it is at Christ, which is awesome.
The beauty of having a bunch of shifts start at the same time too is like the ability for post shift beers. And now that COVID is improved, it's so nice being able to do post shift beers again, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna, at this point, we wanted this one to be totally informal. I'm gonna open it up for questions from you guys, and like anything is fair game. Feel free. There are no dumb questions, we promise. So we'll let these guys talk if you got any questions.
I got a question. You kind of started talking about it a little bit with the mentorship. Can you go into that a little bit more? Is it kind of a formal thing where you guys get aligned based on like career interest or maybe specialty interest, or is it more informal? How does that all work?
I can take this one. So it can kind of be as formal or as informal as you like it to be. It's usually, I forgot the exact timeline. Is it like a month or so into residency? You can kind of make like a preference list of who you would like to be paired up with as your mentor. And a lot of people do pick based on professional interest and stuff. Like some of the guys interested in crit care linked up with our guys that are crit care trained, versus just people you get along with in the room very well and see yourself being able to hang out with. And as far as like responsibilities with your mentor, it's as much or as little as you want. Generally we go out to different things. Like we've done Topgolf, we've done a couple dinners. I know other residents have done like sporting events with their mentors. And it's just kind of things like that.
Yeah, I'll add so I think tons of the mentorship comes informally for sure, but like everything, you try and formalize portions of it. And so part of that's like even now we're moving towards med student mentors when they're rotating with us, having a resident assigned. I think you guys, isn't there still an underclassman, upperclassman mentor assigned as well when you're an intern? So a little bit more of a near peer to talk to. And then, yeah, we assign meaning the RLT, the residency leadership team assigns those mentors pretty early, like the first month of residency. And the caveat is like interests change, as you can imagine. And so the nice thing, we're a big ED and a big department. So we've got 60 something full-time attendings, and there are toxicologists and crit care docs and ultrasound trained and simulation fellow trained and whatever it may be. And so once people start maybe figuring out what their like career goals are, a lot of times we'll shift, and there's no hard feelings. Crab was there last night with us. Crab initially, Kishi was his mentor initially, and then he switched over to me because he's looking to do fellowship, maybe crit care, but maybe something else. So anyways, the moral story is that there's flexibility. And sometimes we just give multiple mentors too in that case. So.
Perfect, thank you.
I have a question about you guys have global health opportunities and also an international elective. Are they different? And like, how has that kind of changed with COVID? I'm sure pretty drastically, but like,
yeah,
is that still like an option?
I'll answer this one because these poor guys have been through COVID. So COVID changed everything for everyone, unfortunately. But our goal this year is to get back to normal, which is pretty exciting. First thing is the global health electives can be a little bit tricky for any residency because as you can imagine, there's a funding issue. And so many times hospital systems don't see the value in funding you to go work in a different country. And so I give Advocate a ton of credit because they're super cool about this, and they basically let our residents do their thing, and they value just in general the international elective. So we aligned with the like our current program, which is actually with somebody here's from Creighton, with a group out of Creighton. That's like the Center for Latin American Concern, and that's like a standing relationship we have. But that was just sort of to establish one kind of longitudinal relationship. And then the goal was that people would start kind of doing their own thing. And so we have attendings, for example, like Thayer's kind of always out, even amidst COVID, I think he was in Jordan and stuff recently. And we've had previous attendings who are heading over to Africa. And so the goal is basically for residents to go do that. And as with all of our electives, our residents are pretty free to kind of build their elective the way that they want, as long as it's legit, we'll sort of sign off on it. So our hope as we get into a more normal world is for people to start going other places. I think Uzma went somewhere else as well. I can't remember where she went. But anyways, the COVID shut everything down, and it was less so about us, but other countries didn't want Americans coming in because our COVID rates were so high. And so yeah, there's a formal relationship that we have sort of standing, but we're very flexible and letting people go where they want, as long as they can sort of have a legitimate elective out of it and kind of show us the value.
I wanted to add one more thing, if that's okay. There's that formal thing, and then kind of informally, there's also one of our home crit attendings at the hospital. I haven't seen him in a little while, but it's because I'm not in the ICU. Dr. Salul has his own nonprofit, and that's the one that actually Dr. Ahmad or Thayer, one of the attendings in the ER, he's gone with him, and some of the other intensivists have gone overseas. It's a pretty big nonprofit. They do stuff in the Middle East. So there are, if you don't want to, or if you can't find your own, like where you would want to go, there are things you can do, whether formally or through some of the other people we know within the hospital that can get you out there.
Yeah, and his interest is very much Syrian refugees. But Dr. Akhtar is actually who Uzma went with. He's the pediatric pulmonologist who I believe like funded and built his own hospital and stuff. So there's a lot of people in the community who are super involved, and we're happy to let residents kind of join them. It's nice to have relationships with them too.
Mm-hmm.
Cerny, there's a question in the chat just before we move on past this. Are these global elective opportunities typically 1 month long? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, they're typically 1 month, just because most things in our curriculum are 1 month, grouped as 1 month. You do get flexibility with your electives, and if in theory you could align your elective months like in a row. Some people have done that for longer experiences in the past. So our residents basically get to build their own schedules. You guys sat down together probably a couple months before the year started, and the residents from each class get together and sort of build their block schedule of who wants to be on whatever when. And so that's helpful for people who may want to get married or anticipate, like if somebody is pregnant and has a child coming, sometimes they'll align certain months when they need it. I know for my class, it was always big. We wanted to have a warm weather and a cold weather trauma because they were so different. But yes, the moral story is if you arrange something that doesn't align perfectly, you can do that. You can also split your elective blocks and stuff. So there's some flexibility there.
Hi, I have a question. What opportunities are there for residents to practice teaching?
I'll let you guys go.
Okay. Yeah. Tom can obviously jump in as well, but so not only because it's a one-to-one, the seniors don't, the interns don't staff with like a senior, but just on shift informally, very often the interns will kind of come to the seniors for kind of either support or guidance, especially starting out. So we do have floats in the ER, and I think that's actually, we don't talk about it as much, but that's a great place where you are able to teach, especially as a senior. So as a float, your job is usually to help out the intern teams, whether that be helping them with codes. So you go into like a recess bay, and they're at the head of the bed getting ready to intubate. The attending will usually have you, the senior, standing next to the intern to kind of like help guide them and help out in case anything comes up. That also goes along with like central lines or any other procedures. And on top of that, we do have med students that rotate with us. So on shift, you do get to teach. And again, it's kind of nice that it's one-to-one because it's you and attending, and it would be a med student. But you are able to teach, you are able to like, and it's kind of dependent on your own style, but I really like having a med student with me during shift because it just gives me an opportunity to kind of, I feel like when I was a med student, it was always a little nerve wracking. So at our shop, I feel like we try to get people to go see as many patients as they can. We're not big about like, them doing, or, med students doing notes, but that gives the opportunity to go over cool cases and like teach, do like a little chalk talk if you can, or just talk about something real quick. So yeah.
Yeah, and just kind of a couple other little things to add. As Miles mentioned, most of it. You do the opportunity to participate in conference too. You're assigned a handful of lectures throughout the year that you have to give. They kind of signed out like a spreadsheet at the beginning of the year, and you sign up for topics you're interested in, or sometimes you could use it to sign up for topics that you are clueless about to kind of force you to learn it and then present it. And then I'd say first year there's less opportunity to teach because the med students don't get paired up with the first years just because you're trying to figure out your own thing. But second and third years, at least during like this portion of the year, you have a med student more often than not. So there's plenty of opportunity to teach. And like as Miles said, one of my favorite chances is the float shifts, because kind of your responsibility as a senior resident in the room on a float shift is to go to all the intern codes, like as Miles was saying, and kind of take over the code, and we're not let the intern run the code, but you kind of supervise, and the attending just kind of stands back and lets you do your thing.
Strengths is that one-to-one model. That's something that really drew me to the program, as I'm sure as it was for you guys too, especially having rotated in places that were much more layered. The flip side of it then is exactly this question that you asked. And so I would say the other thing is there's learners kind of from other programs, right? So we've always got internal medicine and family medicine residents rotating with us. And so, some shifts, like I may go work, I think I'm with Conweiler on Friday, and I'm pretty sure it's gonna be me, Conweiler, a med student, and off service internal medicine resident. So there's a lot of teaching to be had there. We allow our residents, I think, it's really important to focus on career preparation in a 3-year program because you have such a, you only have so much time to kind of get that in. And so we encourage each of our residents who are interested in a different area or a niche to assume a resident director role. And so if you're interested in simulation or critical care, whatever, you can become the resident director of that. Many of our residents who are interested in careers in academia become the resident directors of teaching. And so what that means is like when the med students are rotating with us, they're going to do like our med student teaching rounds where that's, like kind of more dedicated to it. Laceration labs, like stuff like that, where it's much more didactic. So there's sort of a formalized role for those who are interested in it. And then I think furthermore, most of our electives at some point came from a resident who wanted to do something. And so it was Ryan McKillop who ultimately created the resuscitation elective. And basically his idea was for a month, he wanted to just come to the ED and go to all of the codes. And then let's say it was a GI bleed, then afterwards he'd have a little bit of time to like read up on it, pull some literature, talk with the pharmacist, and then you can sort of debrief or chalk talk with the resident who actually ran that code. So if you're an intern and somebody's in septic shock and there was something interesting about it, if there's a resus elective resident there, they're going to come to your code. They're going to give you a hand with whatever you need. And then they actually have a little bit of dedicated time to do the lit search and kind of more academic stuff afterwards. So that's a pretty fun, I think, popular elective as well. Yeah. So anyways, the moral story is there's like tons of different ways. And I think at different levels, med students, other residents. The last piece of it is a lot of times on our off-service rotations, I think it's fair to say that you kind of get looked to as in a supervisory role. And so I think what's advocates policy? It's like you do like 5 central lines to be approved for central lines, or LPs to be whatever it is, which means like you need 5 where the attending is standing next to you through the whole thing before you can kind of go run free and do it on your own. And so for me, when I was an intern in the MICU, what that meant is I was frequently asked to supervise my seniors who hadn't gotten their 5 yet, because as an intern, like a couple months in, I had been signed off. So same thing on some of my other rotations. A lot of times they come to the ER residents to ask you to kind of sign off on theirs as well. So and every month of every rotation at different levels, I think there's kind of opportunity for that.
Yeah, and just kind of echoing off of that, just kind of another perk of the program is in the hospital, we're very well respected as the emergency medicine residents. We have at Christ, we have a IM residency, an FM residency. We have OB-GYN residents who come from other hospitals, and then we'll be starting a general surgery residency next year. And when we're on all of our off-service rotation, oh, and we have peds too. When we're off service on peds or PICU or in the MICU with the IM residents and stuff, we're looked up to and respected because most of us have our procedures done earlier than all the off service people. And just the experience that we get in the ER, the nurses and other residents and other attendings all look up to us. And you don't get that like outsider perspective where everybody's like, I don't know who you are, what you're doing here, but just kind of stay in the corner. Like, we are very well respected on those rotations.
That is because we're like, I think we are the oldest program in the hospital, but if those home programs that you talked about, we have, but because we're so busy, we've always got other programs stationed there. So like right now, UIC's general surgery residency, most of it's at Christ. Ortho residents from UIC and CCOM, neurosurgery residents from Broman, urology fellows from County, UIC EM residents doing trauma with us. There's just a lot of residents in house, even if they're not homed with Advocate. And then I'll add one other kind of, I think, unique thing, which is, Tom's right. Even as a med student, I remember going to different rotations. You can feel like an outsider if it's not your home base, perhaps. And I think one cool thing at Christ is ever since Baronis took over the ICU, so many of the critical care docs are EM crit care trained, that it's really flipped from being like gone are the days where the pulmonologist ran the ICU. Now there's a really good chance you're going to be with an EM crit care trained attending. And that's something that's really unique at Christ. And I think part of that, like why it feels like home, even when you're off service and stuff. So.
Thank you.
Hi.
For
No, go ahead, Natalia, you can go.
Just kind of going off of that, I hear, yeah, thank you. A lot of good teaching. Just, I guess, a more general question. How does orientation look like for interns coming in? Just curious too.
I'll let you guys go. Make
Our
sure
orientation.
there is learning. Emphasize the learning, Tom.
Yeah.
You go first.
So yeah, orientation is all about the learning, all day lectures for a month straight. No, our orientation is a month long, which is awesome. It gives you time to kind of acclimate and get to know your classmates and stuff. There is learning. There are some lectures throughout the day, each day, that are like high yield things to prevent you from drowning when you start, like just things that you really need to know when you walk into the ER. However, as I mentioned before, we are very big on wellness, and our orientation reflects that. There's a ton of downtime. There's a ton of time for you to get to know your co-interns, as well as the rest of the residents in the program. There's time you guys will go, you'll have a retreat. I don't know how COVID will affect that based on how it'll be a year from now, who knows. But there's a chance for you guys to go away for a night, and just kind of have a bonding experience with each other. It's great. It's like the greatest month ever. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'll add is you do get some shadow shifts, which are great because I mean, literally all you do for the shadow shift, you're not managing anyone. You're going to be there. It's going to be a second or third year who's actually running the team. You're going to pick up maybe between 2 to 5 patients at the absolute most. And your entire job is just learning how to chart, how to put orders in, how to put discharges in, how to put an admission order in, who to talk to. So that way, when you actually start in the room, you're much more prepared. And it's very low pressure. Yeah, and the only other thing I'll add is I still miss orientation month in my third year now.
We're very open that like the goal of that month is to learn a little bit about emergency medicine, but mostly to get to know your classmates, to become comfortable in a new city. It's like every year we're drawing more residents from places we never drew from before. And so this may be your first time in Chicago for an extended period of time. So I want you to like get out and enjoy it. To get to know the system, like the hospital system, which is enormous and nuanced and to like, it's just like Esma said, like learn how to function. Like before you can learn medicine, you have to be able to function. Otherwise you just get crushed. And so those are the goals. And I think it's super helpful to have a month to do that. Especially at a place like Christ, where it's like, it's enormous and it's nuanced. And, you know, one of the really cool things about Christ is I think it trains you for the real world, right? So I remember when I was in medical school, if you wanted to admit a patient, you just like picked up the phone and called the resident or called whoever. And so, you know, called the whichever resident or fellow was on cardiology for the STEMI. Well, that's not how like 99% of the world works in emergency medicine. And so the cool thing about Christ is like, yeah, we've got family medicine residents and they have some patients, but maybe like 5% of our patients, and internal medicine probably has another 15. They've got more. But the rest of those patients belong to primary care doctors in the community. And some of them admit to the hospitalist and some of it still admit to themselves and they round every day. And so you have to like learn how to figure out who this patient gets admitted to. And then you got to call them and meet them and talk to them. And because that's sort of how the real world works. And so it's cool. It's nice being able to, sometimes you get to call a resident really easily and just dial one. And sometimes you've got to page out a community doc who've never met before and learn how to pronounce his name and get him admitted. So that's a good experience. And that's a lot of what orientation is about.
Dr. Toodles.
Yeah. There's some tough names on that list.
Hi, my name is Princess. Thank you guys for having this session tonight. I attend OU HCOM in Ohio. My question to you guys is, as residents, how do you feel like you've been supported not only by your fellow residents, but also faculty? And what recommendations have you guys made within the past, since you've been there, I guess, that you have seen directly implemented into your program?
Great question.
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead.
All right, sorry. So I think just starting out with orientation month, the thing I loved about orientation month is I think that like made built residency on top of that. So you got to know your co-residents really well. You got to know the RLT very well. And then after that, I mean, not only is orientation month a great time to know each other and everything, they prep you really well too. They just let you know kind of like what to expect once you're in the room. And then I personally think our classes do a great job, not only between each class, but like third years to second years and like first years to third years, whatever, of looking out for each other. So we'll come to each other, we'll vent to each other. If we've had a rough day, we'll talk about it. And then not only will we do that, we'll try to come up with a solution. So whether it's, you know, hey, you know, you should really talk to the chief about this, or, you know, hey, why don't we just go and talk to Cerrone about this real quick? And then on top of that, the attendings always have your backs too. So even when you're, I would say like in the room, I've never had an issue. I've never, you know, it's been fine. It's usually off service, you know, when you have other attendings, working with other residents, sometimes that some friction can arise or you feel maybe a little burnt out or something. And then the nice thing is though, you're still kind of near the ER. So for like trauma, you're near the ER. Even when I was on PICU or I was on NCCU or like MICU or literally anything else, I would walk down to the ER and just talk to people. So everyone's available to you. We have our formal mentor process as well. And there's like a formal process to like report things as well within the hospital system. So there's just so many different layers where you are supported and people look out for you. And then I guess the thing I would say in terms, this program takes your feedback. Like there is no other program, I think, where not like also for like the match process, but like just our rotations, our curriculum. For example, hand surgery used to be a 3-week rotation in our third year. It's now a 2-week rotation because of very strong recommendations from the previous class. So just in the couple of years that I've been here, I've seen multiple things change based off resident recommendations.
Yeah, and you guys may not realize it because it sounds like habit too, right? So like every 6 months, every resident meets with one of the PD or APDs, and we sit down for an hour. And not only are we evaluating you guys and giving you feedback, but I think we probably spend half of it on you guys giving us feedback. And that feedback can be things on like how to, a lot of times it's off service that we're sort of improving. That's not to say that our ED is perfect. We're always doing that as well. But some of our biggest changes have come there. And so I think like, I'll give you big examples, which is like our ortho rotation. I think orthos ortho's a tough rotation everywhere just because surgeons have a very different idea of how this goes than we do. But we used to rotate with a different ortho group. We've got a couple that are on staff at Christ, and it was the feedback from residents that ultimately made us switch to the group that we're with currently, and Dr. Luke, who's I think a really great teacher. When I was a resident, we used to do a neuro floor rotation, and the idea was you'd respond to the stroke codes and stuff, which was true, but there's a lot of downtime where you're just rounding on like MS patients and floor patients, and that's valuable to a degree. But I think ultimately it was our feedback that we'd rather do the neuro ICU as like a full required block rather than just an elective. We switched over to the neuro ICU. So at this point, aside from peds, I think that was our very last floor experience. So basically those things all come from 6-month evaluations. And I think, yeah, it's like Esma said, like the beauty of being, we think it's a strength to have Christ be our only site. There's some programs that rotate through 4 or 5 hospitals. We love being at one site. And if we ever felt that we could find something better somewhere else, we'd probably do it. We struggle to find a hospital with like more trauma or more septic patients or more STEMIs or more, whatever the heck it is. When the day comes, we could go, I mean, there's like a million Advocate hospitals. We could go to any of those really easily. But the nice thing about having a home base is like, you're never far from the ED charting room. And so if somebody gives you shit on an off service rotation, you can come down just to talk, or if we need to like go talk back to them, we're happy to do that as well. So I should introduce here, Patsy's here. Patsy, give us a wave.
Hey.
So sorry that I'm late.
No, it's fine.
Right now, one of my patients decided to be very unwell at approximately 6:59. So I'm so sorry that I'm late.
Did you get cool procedures out of it?
Yeah, I intubated, I did a central line, I did an A line, all the things.
There you go. It was worth it. We don't mind at all. Thanks for coming.
I know, I'm sorry, guys.
No worries. We'll let you guys keep going just because we want to be respectful of your time. Any other questions?
I have a question that you guys can probably speak on. It seems like orientation kind of sets us into the culture of everything. Can you speak on the culture of the ED itself, how you guys interact with the residents, with the nurses, with the techs? If you have to call consultants, do they kind of give you some pushback, some trouble, or is it kind of smooth sailing, direct admit style?
I'd say 99% of it is smooth sailing. Interaction with other residents is not a problem at all. Interaction with the rest of the staff in the ER, the nurses, the techs, everybody in there has been great. There's no issues whatsoever. As far as admitting patients, I'd say well over 90% is not an issue. There's a handful of specialists that'll give you a little bit of sass here and there. But I mean, you're going to see that anywhere. Like I said, overall, it is an excellent experience as far as that goes.
Yeah, our ED is so fun. I just came off of a month, like an EMS admin month, which is where we get like a little bit more introduction into like the administration side of things. But and you weren't really expected to be in the ED ever. And I came to the ED very frequently to see all my friends because everyone was there. Like I have a bunch of friends who are nurses now that I like go out with on the weekends and stuff like that. So it's like, I'd say the camaraderie is high at Christ. And I think that's just what happens when you are in such like a high intensity environment that you like kind of lean on everyone. It's not just like residents leaning on the attendings. It's kind of like everyone really comes together, which has been awesome to see like over the past year. I'm a second year, so just over the past year, it's been awesome.
Yeah, and then like final thing I would say too is attending. I don't know. I love the attendings. So everyone's first name basis. There's like 2 people you call doctor. There used to be 3. Dr. Harwood, he retired. Oh no, actually I guess it's just 2. Dr. G and Dr. Harwood, right?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah.
Dr.
Yeah, so,
yeah, exactly.
But I don't know. I like, for example, so just build on it too. Like I hang out with the attendings, like these attendings, these guys, I'm going to keep in touch with them even when I graduate. I think you build bonds in this residency, you build friendships, and you're going to continue talking to those people, seeing those people in the future. It's not like just over or anything.
Yeah, it's cool now. Like, I trained not that long ago, but I was at Wesley's wedding last weekend, and Amanda, the charge nurse, was sitting at the table with us when Allison Kerwin, she's one of the cardiology nurse practitioners who was an ED nurse who started right when I did, and I think I found out she was pregnant like very, very early in the ED because like, you know, this becomes your sort of your family. So that stuff's really cool. It makes it fun to go to work because it's like, even when it's a shit show, at least it's a shit show with your friends, you know?
Yeah.
Alexander put a question in there about elaborating on the department style, which I'm going to talk about just for a minute. So we have charting rooms, which we really like, and our ED is currently under construction, and we're going to keep the charting rooms. That there's a lot of discussion amongst the residents and attendings and all that. We like it because it's an academic program. It's nice to have space where occasionally, once in a blue moon, you can close the door and chalk talk and avoid the cast for like a minute, and have some time to like chart with some quiet. It's really loud. It's like a sensory overload environment in the ED. So we sit in a charting room with our team, the people you sit next to, which is part of it too. In our model, you know, it's all team focused. So it's nice to be able to sit with your team. And so there's a couple of different charting rooms. It's not pod layout. And so the hard part with pods, back in the day, we used to have like a pod system where someday you'd show up and you'd be the general care pod or the critical care pod. And that was cool, except like on the critical care pod, you went home and your brain was like a blur because you got your ass handed to you. And then general care pod, like you're like, man, if I see another belly pain, like, and so ultimately what we do now is we rotate through. And so we have teams, there's red, blue, gold, and orange team. And then there's floats like these guys talked about before. And the patients who come in just get assigned in order to one of those teams. And there's a critical care rotation and a general care rotation. And so every fourth critical care patient will be yours. Similarly with the general care ones. And so it's not like you can load up your pod and sit on your patients. You get like the patients keep coming. So you got to keep moving type of thing. When our new ED opens, it's going to be similar. So at some point, I'm getting Trushar. Trushar is one of our attendings and our ED ops guy. And he's going to actually walk through in like a 4-minute Friday, some of the plans for the new ED and some of the pictures. Like it's cool. Now they're finishing up what used to be the PED and the GI area is like, looks like an ED now, which is cool. So our ED footprint is expanding dramatically. And so it's going to be beautiful and it's way overdue. And it's super exciting that we're starting to see some of that come to life. But when that happens, it still will not be a pod. It's going to be very much like a giant ED with like you rotating through it instead of staying in your little silo, I guess.
That was really helpful. That was actually going to be one of my questions about kind of the layout and if you were seeing critical and general patients at the same time. But continuing on that topic, could you talk a little bit about the shift schedule and how it works when you're on your department months?
Yeah, I'll probably do that one if you guys don't mind. One of my many APD hats is I'm also in charge of scheduling. So the two scheduling chiefs, Monica and Amy, make the schedule and they shoot it over to me. I was a scheduling chief back in the day. Actually there's one coming tomorrow, I think, that I'm gonna have to look through. But so our shifts in general tend to start at 6 a.m., at 2:30 p.m. and 11 p.m. The reason I say general is we do also have like a 7:30 a.m. shift, and every now and then you'll get a float shift that starts at a different time. But the bulk, 90+% of your shifts are gonna be 6 a.m., 2:30 p.m. or 11 p.m. They're 10-hour shifts, but you're only getting assigned patients like we talked about there for 8.5 of those hours. And the idea is you get an hour and a half to kind of clean up your list so that you can sign out a pretty clean list to the next team. Especially as an intern, that's really nice that there's not like a million things to do on the patients who are getting signed out to you, especially in like the winter if there's borders and stuff. The beauty of that is many of us don't live, like we kind of live all over. So like I'm up north by O'Hare, Esmel's downtown in the city. I lived in the South Loop. Patsy, are you in the West Loop now or where are you at?
West Loop.
West Loop. And then Tom's out in the burbs, right? So depending on whether you've got kids or you like wide open spaces like Tom or whatever it may be, there's some people who are doing a commute. And the nice thing about those times, Chicago traffic's a bear, but commuting at 5 a.m., 1 p.m. or 10 p.m. kind of gets you out of any traffic concerns, which makes it a much more livable situation, especially for mass majority of the residents are living downtown during it. So that's sort of how the scheduling works. And you rotate through. Our interns don't work overnights until they've completed at least 3 months in the room and the RLT has sort of cleared you. The idea is that the overnights we're a little bit shorter staffed. It can be a little bit chaotic. And so I just make sure that everybody's ready. But then after that, you're working kind of everything there. I'm gonna answer one question here. Sumit wants to know, can you guys speak to how the residency addresses, oops, sorry, I lost it, social EM and resources for the uninsured and underinsured. I'm gonna go quickly. That's a huge, there's like too much to say there. So the social EM part, I think, is a huge list. I think we have a panel coming up on it dedicated to it because it kind of needs its own panel. We've got attendings and residents who are like involved in that. Like I said, we have we've got resident directors of social emergency medicine. One of our residents a couple of years back, Tammy, she created actually a social EM curriculum that runs longitudinally throughout your 3 years. And we have speakers who come in. There's really interesting speakers. Like one of them was talking about like the history of redlining in the city and like how, you know, real estate has segregated our city and contributes to why our patients are in such segregated neighborhoods and things like that. So we bring in speakers from kind of all over. We have this year, we're dedicating conference time to like getting involved in the community and stuff, which will be cool. There's always people getting involved on their own, but that'll be really neat. Advocates always super involved. The Strides for Peace run that Advocate sponsors. We staff the CPR tent if you're not involved in that way. They've kind of got their hand in everything there. So there's a whole lot there. In terms of resources from the ED, that's a huge question too. So just really briefly, like we talk about our involvement with University of Chicago with the Trauma Recovery Center, which is a grant-funded clinic that is available to any victims of trauma that we see, funded by the state. And so it's nice that we're sort of the point guard for that and getting people referred to that clinic. We've got care managers, like 3 of them that are in the ED, not 24/7, but we're getting close to it. And community health workers, and their job is just to help us like get patients follow-up appointments, even when it seems impossible. Like they work magic. You get appointments for your patients within the week, even if they're county care, even if they're in one of the family clinics nearby, like the free clinics. So that part's really awesome as well. I'm thinking about like even our cardiologists, you guys probably got the emails, the cardiology like clinic that just for low risk chest pains and CHF. So we can discharge those people home. And I saw starting this week, they will take anybody, even if they're uninsured. They're gonna say, you know, it's better to see them there than to lose them, I guess. So I give Advocate a lot of credit for that portion of it. So I just ran through a whole lot. I think there's gonna be like dedicated portions of that. You'll see some of them are up on the blog. There was a social and one last year. So I think that's probably what I'll do there. I'm going to ask you guys, because I talked too much there. Let me give you the next question. How do residents get involved in the community? I think we talked a little bit about that. Each of them is kind of doing their own thing, but we're trying to formalize that so we can do it as a crew. Even like from day one in orientation, when you guys go over to the Ronald McDonald House, like dedicating time to volunteer there. I think it's nice to have a mix of like us organizing stuff and you guys doing your own thing. Oyen and Thayer and Josh, some of our attendings are like really active. They do a ton of volunteering and involvement, and so they're always kind of getting the residents involved. This year, a lot of it's been COVID related this year, like vaccinations, clinics, speaking with people. Patsy, go ahead.
I just was going to say there's a lot like with COVID, especially like going to schools and educating about vaccines and things like that. That was kind of like the main thing I feel like over the past year.
Anything else? There was like a big question, so I was trying to get through a whole lot. Is there anything else that you guys want to say on
You
that?
hit the big stuff I was thinking of. The care managers was a huge thing. And this community outreach stuff is kind of like a new and upcoming thing for us. So we've always done it a little bit. But Oyen and Nadia, one of our current second years, are really trying to expand our community outreach type stuff. And they've got a couple different events set up for us over the next couple months.
I think it's nice too, like, you know, kind of like Elise says, putting your money where your mouth is, right? Like dedicating conference time to these causes. It's one thing to just say you are support or whatever, but like, let's take some time to actually do it, which is cool. Vince asked a question in there about where do residents go afterwards, fellowships, academics, community, which fellowships are most popular. The actual numbers are up on the site on christcm.com. The fellowships kind of trend, like there's trends in what becomes popular and what isn't, right? So like sports med and tox were like really cool 10 years ago. And now it's all about critical care, simulation. Interestingly, COVID has made admin much more popular. So like Tareem was our first resident to do an admin fellowship this year in a while. But I think COVID has opened some people's eyes to like the more global dysfunction in medicine.
I think a lot of people like get interested in EMS. I feel I always like I'm not sure anybody's gone recently, but there's like a lot of involvement with EMS. I feel.
Yeah, I think Kevin Smith will be EMS, an EMS fellowship. Certainly, we've been gearing his application for that. Tom just signed a contract. You're going to work. Tell him about where you're going.
I'm going to a community site out in Northwest Indiana, in the Crown Point area. As far as academic versus community site, it's a pretty even split. Like I said, I took a community job. I say maybe a little more than half end up taking a community type stuff, but there are academic opportunities as well. A handful of people usually end up staying at Christ. That COVID changes everything, has been the topic of everything lately. But yeah, I mean, we kind of go everywhere. We have a huge Christ network kind of across the country that we're able to get in contact with based on places we want to go. They keep a log of all of our graduates and where they ended up and contact information and stuff. So if there's anywhere in the country you want to go, I know of the group of people on here right now, we're spreading the map pretty good. We have a contact person probably in every spot that you guys are, to kind of look for places around there too, which is awesome. I do, yeah. It's partial. There's like one resident covered shift per day. So my contract says like 25% of my shifts will be teaching.
That's cool. So you get like a little bit of everything, which is really neat. I think like recent years, like I said, at least somebody does ultrasound every year. It feels like critical care is becoming more frequent. We seem to have a pipeline to Northwestern and Stanford ever since Baronis was there. We've had like John Myers did wilderness medicine, Oyen did simulation. It's cool to see some residents, like 2 years ago, Maureen Davis just went straight into academics at MCOW without doing a fellowship. So it's nice to see people going straight into it as well. So I'd say we're kind of spanning the globe. Katie Johns is doing sports med right now. So a little bit of everything. The nice thing is there's somebody on staff who's done a fellowship in whatever you're interested in, which is cool.
Yeah, and ultrasound. I think we kind of skipped over ultrasound a little bit here in talking. We have an ultrasound program at Christ. And then we also have had decent interest in ultrasound lately. From our graduating class last year, Giselle, she is in an ultrasound fellowship. And then one of our current third years, Maria, is applying for ultrasound. At least last I talked to her, I think she still is. So their ultrasound is a big one too.
Yeah, longest running ultrasound program in the country, actually. So yeah, we sort of skip over it because it seems so native to us. But yeah, it feels like ultrasound every year. I'm going to ask you guys this one. What is the biggest challenge of being an EM resident at Christ, and what helps you to overcome it? This is a good question.
I guess, I mean, I'm sure everyone's going to have their own thing, so I guess I'll go first. For me, I think biggest challenge, I don't know. I think second year made time management a bit challenging for me. It's not so much of an issue your first year. Your first year is honestly great. Off service makes it nice because you have your weekends off. You're not at the hospital much. Second year is probably the most challenging because of the amount of 24s you do. You do like, I think 4 call months basically where you're on 24-hour shifts at the hospital. And I'll be honest, it can get tiring. I'm never burnt out, but leaving those days, I was tired, and I really had to dig deep to like find my, reason to be there or like find a way to recharge. But I don't know. With that being said, luckily I like working with the people that are there. So going to work wasn't always like dreadful, because even if I was on like trauma, which is probably one of our hardest rotations, I would, overnight I'd stop by the charting room and chat with some people or, do whatever I need to do to get through that night.
Yeah.
The downside of that is like trauma at Christ is unlike trauma almost anywhere in the country. Like I think I slept 2 total hours during my trauma months in residency because that's what happens when you're at a high volume, high acuity shop. And so I think you summed it up right. I don't think I was ever burnt out, but man, was I tired after some of those. In retrospect, I'm glad I did it. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But when you're in the moment, you're right. It's like being near your friends is helpful. I think like the ride program to know you got to ride home if you're too tired to get home is awesome. For me, I don't know about you guys, like just, I always spaced my rotation out. So I was back in the ED after those months, because a month back in the room always like brought me back to life kind of.
Yeah.
I'll let you guys keep Tom and Patsy, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, what Esmail said is big. I mean, second year is definitely one of the harder times. And then kind of the other thing is like the volumes that we see. As an intern, you start out seeing everything. You're kind of treated as an equal to everybody else. If your first patient on your first shift is a full arrest, hey, yo, that's yours, go for it. And that could be a little overwhelming at times too. But as far as overcoming it, the support, and this was kind of talked about a little bit before, and for the sake of time, I'll skip over it a little. Our support system is incredible. Your attending is there and has your back with every single thing you do. They let you run the show, but they're there to back you up as soon as you don't know the answer to something, which is expected early on in your training. So I think any of the challenges that we see, the support system that we have at Christ just fixes all of it.
Yeah, I'm currently a second year and like just did my trauma month. So I agree with Esmail, but I actually think that I'm more like Tom's side. I think the hardest, or like the biggest challenge for me was honestly like my first couple of months in the ED. And it wasn't like anything that I didn't feel supported. It was just that like I just felt like I was drowning every single day. But I think one thing that's like really helpful to, I don't know if you guys talked about this before I came on, but our like scheduling is really awesome. Like my intern year, I don't think that I like missed a single thing that I like really wanted, like needed or wanted to go to. And a lot of that is like the way that scheduling is done. They really are receptive to like the requests that you have, and like every month if you want, if when you're on your EM rotation, you can like take a weekend off and just like request that whole weekend. And so I think that that was just like helpful to me in terms of like giving me like life balance outside of the ED.
That's a really good point. We didn't talk about some of these things, just seem so native to us, right? That's really unique. So I think I remember when I was a chief, we went to SAM to like the chief conference and learning how other programs schedule. And I think the norm is they just have pre-templated blocks that they put Patsy and put Tom, and like you're just on that block. Whereas ours, the chiefs are making a custom schedule each month around your requests. And so like, it's like you said, I never missed a family wedding or a really important event. And that's like really unique compared to my friends and my like med school roommates. We had very different experiences in residency from that standpoint. And yeah, that's a huge deal. It's something we maybe kind of don't think about because it seems so normal to us. But I'm gonna let you guys, just because we're inching, we already went over, so I'm gonna let you guys feel free to go. I'm gonna hang on here for a little bit longer in case anybody has any questions that weren't answered. And then will you guys, maybe Patsy, will you guys put your emails in there? I think Tom, you're in there already, in case they want to reach out to you directly. And then I'll put another plug for the blog, acmcem.com. Actually, all of the residents have volunteered they've given you some info about them, that if you want to talk to somebody who's from your area or similar background or whatever, you can shoot them any emails or questions you may have. They're super open to that, and I think would probably love to talk to you. So otherwise, thank you guys all for joining us. We appreciate it. It's a long season ahead. Good luck. It was nice meeting you all too.
Bye guys. Good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.